Welcome to the Hardwood Time Capsule podcast, presented by Callaway Golf. This episode features one of the most polarizing coaches of the last 20 years. Perceived as a tough, intense, no-holds-barred coach, here you will see the incredible humility, compassion, and down-to-earth nature of the man with the third most coach games in the NBL. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joey Wright. Joey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I've got you loud and clear.
Okay.
How you going?
I'm doing well. Been running around like crazy.
Yeah, It sounds like it. I'll watch what you're doing over there with Transition Sports Adelaide and your movement and stuff there. So we'll have a chat about that in a sec. Once again, thanks so much for making the time to come on. Incredible honor to have someone of your caliber on. Obviously, other than Lindsay Gaze and Brian Goorjian, the most games coached in the NBL, 3-time coach of the year, longest winning streak in the NBL. So what I want today to be about and the direction I'll take it is what we like to do with these podcasts is sort of give more of an insight, take a little walk down memory lane, of course, but rather than just talking about specific games and those sort of things, is give, I guess, the fans a bit of an insight into what it's like being an NBL coach. Whether that's from recruiting, whether that's from being in season, all those sort of aspects, and take a trip there. But first off, we'll start as we always do. Where do we find you these days, and what takes up most of your time?
I'm here in Adelaide, and I'm running a basketball academy called Transition Sports, which is here in Adelaide and Melbourne. I have a gym called Shoot HQ, which is a 24-hour shooting gym. I bought that about a year ago, so I've been running that, and that's been just really great, big time saving for me. But I'm doing those two things. I'm back working. I'm supposed to be retired. I'm back working 7 days a week.
That's right. Some people like that. I mean, not retirement's not for everyone. Is Shoot HQ just in Adelaide?
It is just in Adelaide. Right now, we're opening up a second location soon here in Adelaide, but right now it's just here in Adelaide, but we do plan on branching out.
Yeah, sure. And so does that have weights, gym area, as well as hoops and that sort of thing?
Yeah, correct. It's a full gym with weights and, where you can come in and get your weights, S&C done. But we also have a court there where you can come in and get your shots up. And we have three rims actually there where you can come up and get your shots in. And then we have a conference room where we do anything for birthdays and conferences and coaching seminars as well. And then we have an interactive room where it's just an interactive screen where you come in and kids love it. They, throw the ball against the wall and shoot, do drilling drills and all kind of stuff. So it's been very cool.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And with the Transition Sports, is that something you created? Is that something you do with other people? Obviously, you've got a list of coaches running academies and things like that, from what I can see online. How did that all come about?
The original one, Transition Sports Melbourne, was started by Darren Hindle, a really, really close friend of mine. And during COVID, they really couldn't do anything. So we were doing a lot of stuff here online for them and their group where they could, their kids could watch online what we were doing here. And we were just doing formal workouts. I left the Sixers by then, and I still was working out, Jack McVay and Daniel Johnson and Nick Marshall and all those guys after I left the Sixers because they didn't have anything to do either. It was during COVID, so they were kind of sitting around. So we just started working some people out, some kids joined, and all of a sudden we had about 40, 50 kids working out outside during COVID. And so Darren was like, hey, why don't you just do another Transition Sports there? And so I said, yeah, and that's how we kind of started.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it makes sense. Sometimes it's just an opportunity knocks and then you take it up because, if any of the listeners, well, it doesn't matter whether you're in Adelaide or not, sort of jump on the Instagram, it seems like it's pumping, like there's just people there all the time, and it's great to see the free content. So for the coaches that are on here as well, like there's a lot of content you guys put up of yourself and your other coaches teaching certain things, and also taking it right back to the bare bones. I think that's what's great is to see a coach of your caliber, working with, an 11-year-old or something like that. In terms of, I think I saw a couple on, your philosophy on whether to stride stop or jump stop and those sort of things, I think
Yeah.
that's great to see.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. To me, I've always coached from this perspective. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how old you are. I only care about your focus and your energy that you're putting in. So if you put in focus and energy, doesn't matter to me how good you are or how young you are. Let's get it in.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And there's actually a great story with a professional basketball player now that credits you with something very much along those lines. But we'll touch on that as we go along. What I would like to do now, I guess, Joey, is most people know you from the NBL in terms of your coaching and those sort of things, and perhaps you're playing with Geelong Supercats. But let's let everyone sort of know, how did you actually arrive in Australia? Who recruited you? And I guess going back even further, was basketball always your number one sport, or as a kid was there other things going on?
No, it was nothing else going on.
Yeah,
I played other sports just because the kids in our neighborhood. So I played a little football, a little baseball, just because the kids in our neighborhood. But I was really, really, really good at baseball, and probably would have been. I could have probably played Major League Baseball. I was really good at baseball.
in what
Um,
position?
I was a second baseman.
Okay, yeah.
Second baseman. Football, I was adequate, not great, and basketball was horrible. And but I loved basketball. Absolutely loved basketball. And my dad and my brothers would tell me, stop trying to play basketball and go, keep playing baseball. And all my friends would say the same thing. But I actually loved, like, I just got chills throughout my body whenever I went to a basketball court and someone talked about basketball. So I knew basketball was it for me. I just didn't know if I was going to be good enough for basketball for a long time. So, I didn't really get an inkling that I could really be good at this until I was about 16, 17.
Okay, that's
Uh,
pretty late. Yeah,
I was pretty terrible right up until that point, too.
yeah. What changed at that point?
What? Say that again, Dan?
What changed at that point? Was it a coach that influenced you? Was it you just it all came together? Was it you worked harder?
It was everything. I was definitely the hardest worker, even when I was terrible. So I worked from the age of 12 to 16 with no rewards and no pats on the back and no, vision of being great or no. I had nothing. So, but it kind of all came together at one time. So when I was 16, the summer before my senior year in high school, I went to visit five-star basketball camp, and I actually wasn't supposed to be at that camp. I snuck in. It was a camp for all the All-Americans, and a friend of mine who was an All-American decided not to go and gave me the flyer. So I filled it out, sent it in, and went to the camp and showed up the first day. And this is who's who of high school basketball at that time: J.R. Reed, Chris Corciani, just the top 20 players in the country are all at this camp. The top 50 players are all at this camp, but the top 20 was there for sure. And the guy comes down the line and he goes, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "You don't belong here." And I go, "Yeah, I don't know how I got here." And then I said, I paid my money." And the other guy who was running the camp comes over and he goes, "What's your name?" And he looked, he goes, "Yeah, he paid his money." Like that. And the guy goes, and the guy running the camp told the camp director, which was Howard Garfinkel, who was a legend in basketball in the U.S., a legend, is biggest name in the history of basketball. Howard, and he tells Howard, he goes, "Leave him alone. You're embarrassing him in front of everyone. He's paid his money. Leave him alone. If he doesn't belong here, it'll show up." And so that kind of, I got everybody in the camp looking at me. That gave me extra motivation. I was like, I belong here. I belong here. And I went and destroyed that camp. Destroyed it.
Wow.
Destroyed it. Got to the finals of the one-on-one, beat Rick Fox to get to the finals of the one-on-one. And I'm playing against the number one player in the country in J.R. Reed. And Bobby Knight's on the sideline. Krzyzewski's on the sideline. Bobby Crimmins is on the sideline. It is every coach sitting there watching me play the number one player in the nation, and them all going, "Who the hell is this kid?"
Yeah, yeah.
And when I left there, I had zero offers. When I got to camp, when I left there, I had probably 200 to 300 letters from schools when I got back.
Wow.
And so it all changed from there. I just went on to have a great senior year. Averaged 30 points a game my senior year. The year before that, I only averaged 16. and that was kind of the rocket. But I prepared for that for 4 years. I
I
didn't
was going
know
to
it.
say, yeah, it was a sliding doors moment, but really you've been preparing for it the whole time.
Yeah,
That's a good lesson for people listening to this is, if you just stick at it long enough, and it's one of my favorite sayings, what is it? If you hang around the barber shop long enough, sooner or later, you're going to get a haircut. You
exactly.
know,
Yeah.
that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Joey. And then obviously you go on to college. You play for a couple of colleges, is that right?
Mm. I probably prematurely because I had no offers. In the first team that actually said, "Hey, we'll give you a scholarship," I signed, and
All
I
right.
probably didn't do my research, and that was at Drake University, and that coach was probably inconsistent with who I was personally and his style of play and so forth. So I ended up signing there. Went there for a year, didn't play, and then transferred to University of Texas, who was also recruiting me um, out of my senior year as well. So I transferred to University of Texas and had to sit a year out. So effectively, from the age of 17 to 19, I never played in a basketball game. For those,
When you redshirt like that, are you still allowed to actually train?
yeah, I could train. So
Okay.
I could train because I wasn't an academic casualty. If I was an academic transfer, academic casualty, then I couldn't train. But
Right.
I was just a transfer because of basketball. So yeah, I was able to train that whole year, which was great. I look forward to trainings was my games.
Yeah.
So I came in there ready to go.
Yeah. No, it seems like a common theme when we speak to people that have reached the same heights as yourself in terms of professional basketball. The majority of them actually love the training aspect of it, not just the games. We had Simon Dwight on last week, and yeah, he was like, "That's what I miss is just going to training, lacing up the ankle braces, and just getting after it with the guys." He misses that more than like the atmosphere of the fans and all that sort of stuff, you know. Um,
The fans are a necessary evil. I mean, you had we don't have professional sport, or we don't have practice, or we don't have college, but the fans in the media was never really something that was ever really relevant to me.
yeah,
It was all basketball and practice. Even as a coach, I loved practice. In 18 years of practice, in 18 years of coaching, I missed 3 days of practice.
wow,
18 years. Even Mick Hill, one day I walked in. Mick goes, "One day I just want to walk in here and not see your face." He goes, "I just want to. Just one day, just don't be here." I just didn't believe in missing, and I loved it that much, and it excited me the night before, all the way up until probably the last year. I really, really enjoyed it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was pretty much evident for everyone to see. You know, when it came to game coaching, you can see why it would be the same when it came to practice. And then following on from college, I guess those years were pretty crazy considering you'd gone from not having one college offer to all of a sudden you're in the NBA draft, and and the Phoenix Suns take you with pick 50. It doesn't sort of seem to work out there, but you do go on to interesting name for a team. You can tell us about this because I wasn't across it, but the Presto Ice Cream Kings in Philippines. Now, DMAC came on a while ago and said that when he played there were like his league had like height rules. Was that the situation with this league for you?
Yeah, they have. So they have three. They play year round, and they have three different conferences. So the imports in my conference had to be 6'4" and under. And then they might have another conference 3 months later that's unlimited, and then the Filipino players can be any size. It's just the imports they bring in has to be
Okay.
restricted. Sometimes they're not restricted, and then the next conference you might be able to have one import. So whoever is the commissioner of that conference during that period, he picks the rules. So my conference was all imports had to be under 6'4",
Yeah.
and that was unbelievable experience. 16,000 people yelling, screaming at every game. You play in NBA rules. I averaged 47 points a game, so it's
Wow.
and I wasn't the lead scorer in the league. I don't even think I was the. I think I was the third lead scorer in the league.
Yeah, and then, now you mention that, DMAC did say like he was taking the dinner once, and the coach was like, "You're not shooting it enough. You got to score. You're an import. You got to score."
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know D-Mac went there, but if he went there, you don't go there to pass the ball.
yeah,
You got to shoot every single. The fans are coming to see you. It's basically NBA basketball in the Philippines. That's
yeah.
that's what. Fans are coming to see you. They come to see a show. You need to put on the show. You got to go to work. But it's cutthroat. If you don't, you're out of there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then you sort of push on towards you play in Cyprus, is that right?
I did play in Cyprus.
Yeah. So at that point, what's that? Sorry.
I played for Applewell there in Cyprus.
Yeah. So at this point, are you organising your stuff? Do you have an agent? Do you have a manager?
The Cyprus job did come as a result of a agent. My agent at that time was a pretty NBA agent, and he sent me there just to try to give me some quick cash and get me out of the local leagues, because I'd played some leagues back in the U.S. before then. And went there, enjoyed it, and loved the experience. I ended up coaching there in 2008 as well, so I went back as a coach.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, no, that's that's an interesting country to go across to, because we don't speak to too many that have been across to Cyprus. And then you obviously make your way to, as most Australian fans will know, the Geelong Supercats, who are now known as Geelong United after merging with Corio Bay.
Really?
Who was the coach there, and who recruited you?
Well, Jim Calvin was the coach there, and he's who brought me over. Jim had known me. I think he coached at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff or something like that. We had a really big rivalry against the University of Arkansas, so he saw me a lot in those games there, and recruited me from there. But the real players that recruited me was Mike Mitchell and Freddie Cofield. Those are the guys that really recruited me, because I played on a tour with them the year before. During the off season, I played on a tour with them, and they kept telling me how great Australia was, and I kept telling them, "You guys paid no money, so it's no way I would ever go there." I think I was getting paid. I got paid more twice in 2 months overseas in Europe versus what I got the whole year here in 6 months in Australia.
So were you having to work here on the side as well?
Nah. It was definitely it was truly professional for me. It was enough money to get by. I didn't have to work. Our team did. I think me, Simon Curl, the other import, Jeff Arnold, and Dave. I can't remember Dave's last name. But Dave. Us four didn't work, but everybody else did. Everybody else had it.
Yeah, and then that's sort of where you start to make the transition after the '96. Year into coaching. Can you sort of talk us through that situation? Because someone who's obviously a pro, that's a relatively short career. For those of us that sort of weren't around at the time, what happened at that point?
Well, I went back to the U.S. after that. After things didn't work out at Geelong, I had a son at the time. My son was turning 5. And I committed to myself that I was not going to be overseas during his development years. I didn't want to be away from him as he was growing. Up until 5, he came to visit me in Geelong. He came wherever I went, he would be there. But it wasn't, him in a stable school. It wasn't him, getting consistent parenting from his dad anyway. So I was like, nah, I've had enough. And so I decided to quit. For 7 years, I didn't play basketball or coach for 7 years. I worked in real estate for those 7 years to kind of set myself up so I was able to coach. In those 7 years, I was still in the gym every single day. In those 7, I was called coach every single day. Like the players at that time at UT, TJ Ford, and who else was there? Brandon Mouton. All those guys still called me coach. So I was in the gym. I was working them out. I was still playing with them. I was still hooping. Ira Clark, Gabe Manecki, all these guys still called me coach. And so I knew I wanted to coach, but I never, ever want to coach on a coaching salary. I never want to make a financial decision on a basketball court. And so I want to set myself up so that if I got fired, if it didn't work out, if I could go and be okay with it. But I didn't want to coach. I knew coaching is pressure, but it's extra pressure when you're feeding yourself with it.
Wow, that's a pretty mature mindset for that age. Did you have a mentor? Did you have someone that advised you of that, or did you just come to that of your own volition?
I knew I was going to always be a coach. I knew it from day one. I knew that I could think about things that I could never do physically. I thought about concepts differently than other people. I can remember the very first offense I was ever taught, when I was taught, who was taught to me, the teaching points, and I was only 8 years old then.
Wow.
So I knew I was going to be a coach. I found some old literature. My mom showed me a box of stuff when I filled out, and my goal was to coach Los Angeles Lakers when I was about 9. I think I wrote down I'm gonna
Nine
coach
years
the
old. Wow.
Lakers. I'd even play for the Lakers. I never thought I was, ever gonna. The NBA stuff was so far outside of what I could even dream of. I never thought I'd play there, but I thought I'd be a coach.
Yeah. And so I guess around the time that you come back to Australia and coach with the Brisbane Bullets, your son would probably be, if I'm doing the maths right, sort of around high school, starting
Right.
high school sort of age.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So is that why you felt sort of comfortable, sort of now's the time, or you just financially set yourself up with the real estate stuff?
Well, we both. The real estate stuff had been pretty solidified and set up by then. And we sat down and talked as a family. And the first year I came over, he stayed, and but he was able to come visit, and then he would just come visit, routinely, and we have one of the strongest relationships. And he said that he never knew I made that sacrifice until 2 months ago. I was at home, and I told him, and
Wow.
he was doing the numbers himself, and he was like, "Dad, like you were young when you quit playing. Why you quit playing?" And I said, "Because of you." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, because of you." And I told him why. But he had always thanked me for our relationship, and I always thanked him for our relationship. We have a very, very strong relationship. And I don't know if that would have been the case if I sacrificed basketball for him. And so I have no
Uh,
regrets at all.
yeah.
Not
There's no chance it would have been the same. No, that's an incredible sacrifice. That must have blown his mind when he put two and two together, and then you confirmed it.
yeah,
Because yeah, a lot of people that don't have the same values as you would have probably thought you were crazy, in terms of, like, a lot of people dream to be a professional basketball player, but at the same time to be selfless and put that ahead. That's a great not just story. That's a great lesson, I think. Um,
well, I'd never ever, and this is not a great thing to say. I had my son when I was 23, and I'd never, ever, ever up to that point put anything before my relationship with basketball. And I mean my relationship with siblings, my relationship with my mother and father, all, spiritual relationship, all that stuff was second to basketball. And when I first saw my son and I first held him, it was the first time anything was more important than basketball. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no clue. I got cut 2 days before by the Phoenix Suns, and everybody kept asking me about being cut and how I was, and I was like, "What are you talking about? I gotta look at this kid. Like look at this kid. I wasn't there when he was born. I missed it. I actually the day I got cut, she was in the hospital and she was about to have him, and so I got cut that day, and I was able to get there 2 days later. So I actually missed his birth. But when I held him for the first time, I didn't think about being cut. I didn't think about before, those 2 days were pretty tough. But once I held him, it was a wrap. So
yeah,
I had no problem at all whatsoever, and I knew that he was something special in my life, and it came for a reason. October 31st.
yeah. That's amazing, and that no doubt. I don't even really need to ask you that. That surely helps you when you're mentoring young men. Whether it's professional or not professional, in terms of perspective. In life and balance and those sort of things. I guess I'm cognizant of time, so I'll move along to when you start coaching the Brisbane Bullets and head coaching. I guess up to this point, you've been thinking about coaching since you were 8 years old. Um, is it actually what you expected it was going to be like when you started, or was it quite different?
The only thing that surprised me is the number of people that thought I was going to fail, because I never ever thought about failing. Like it never crossed my mind. And I remember Wayne Hemming, this reporter, in the press conference when they were hiring me. We did the first press conference, and Tigger goes, Wayne goes, hey, and he kind of slammed his papers down. He goes, "What makes you think you could do this?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, What makes you think you can coach this team?" And I go, "I never thought about not being able to coach this team." And he goes, "Is that the answer?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I honestly never thought about not being able to do this." So, and then, some other coaches that were coaching the league at that time had made some comments through the traps about my ability to coach, and we had a couple coaching things at the beginning of the year where coaches had to get together, and I found myself on the other side of the room by myself, and I kind of was like, "What the hell is going on here? What, like, I'm a coach like you guys," and I just realized that most people saw me as still a young black athlete. Most of them didn't see me as a mature coach. They were, older white guys for the most part, and
Yeah.
they saw me as a young athlete. And they just thought I was going to come in here, and I don't know what the hell they thought, but
Yeah.
whatever they thought wasn't what I was thinking. I was coming there to put this team together and win games. That's what
Yeah.
I was going.
Yeah.
And so we did that.
Yeah. I think that's that successful mindset there, is you're seeing that as a challenge, not being, instead of being offended, going, well, I'm going to show you guys. Well, from what it sounds like, you had the mindset that, like, I'm built for this, like, I'm meant to be a coach. I guess my question though is, because there's quite a few aspects, obviously, to sports coaching, and you mentioned earlier how you just, when it came to, like, for lack of a better term, the X's and O's and understanding play and that sort of thing, it almost came naturally to you. You could see ahead of the game a little bit in that regard. You could see talent. But then the other side of it, I guess, more the art of coaching, is managing people, managing personalities and those sort of things, which is sometimes a learned behavior. How did you find that in your first couple of years?
Probably a bit too trusting initially. Looking back on things, probably a bit too trusting. But I'd worked as, I owned my own real estate firm for, 5 of those 7 years. So I was managing people and
Yeah.
dealing with putting fires out, and how a lot of aspects of real estate was transferable. So I had a feel for how to relate to people. And I just did the same thing when it came to basketball. I was honest. I was fair but firm. Like, I'm a, and not, this is not probably a great thing, but I'm a black and white person. It's either right or it's wrong. And so I was firm when I need to be firm, but I was always fair. So I made sure that whatever I was saying was right. And managing the people part of it was tough, but it wasn't anything that I didn't expect.
Yeah, no, fair point. When you manage the business and you've already managed, whether it's egos or developing people or whatever it is, I guess sort of a little attachment to that as well is when you come into an environment like you've just described, in terms of some people, for whatever reason, didn't think you might not make it, or might fail with the team. Did they trust you? Like, at that point, were you given the keys to select your own assistant coaches, or were they provided for you and you just had to make it work? What was the situation there?
Yeah, the proviso was I could pick my own assistant coach for sure. I was handed one that first half season that I started off. His alliance was still with the old coach, so I didn't get much out of him from that period. I wish he would have saw me as a coach and not as the reason why his friend wasn't coaching anymore. And he kind of took that, and that's what I meant by being a bit too trusting. I thought, once again, I thought basketball superseded all that shit. So I was like,
Politics, yeah.
he'll think that basketball is important. Big Joe, who's one of my best friends to this day, I speak to him almost every day. He was a part of that coaching staff who also treated me like crap. And we joke about it now, tell all the stories of me sitting in the middle seat in the back of the plane, because he was mad at me for taking his friend's job. I never got tickets the first, half year that I coached there. My water was always warm. Everybody else's had ice.
That's petty.
Petty shit. But he was so good at his job at the end of the year. I just said to him, "You're great at what your job is, but you treated me like crap. I've known it, but I just haven't said anything. You go away for a couple of days, and if you want your job, you come back and you treat me and everybody else in this organization with respect." The assistant coach, I fired on the spot. He was not there. But yeah, it was that first part was just learning to not trust so much, stay firm, stay. I never wavered from what I believed on the basketball court. I don't know, maybe I was a bit silly, but I felt like I knew what was going on the court, and that was going to be the easy part.
Well, yeah, but I think you probably have to be, strong. At the end of the day, you're the head coach, and if we see it time and time again in any sport, the assistant coaches and those support networks can have suggestions, but if things go wrong, there's only one person on the chopping block, and that's the head coach. So, and I think some of the listeners might have heard recently Trevor Gleason, I think, was on the radio, and he was saying that these days in the NBA, because they were like, "What are you doing with your job?" And he's like, "Well, I lost it because in the NBA, pretty much, if the head coach goes, they just scrap the whole staff, so that situations like yours don't happen." And the new guy brings in whoever he wants, or she. Yeah. So you obviously build up over a period of time at Brisbane to a point where you had this 2006-07 season. It probably still goes down as one of the best in history. And I encourage anyone that is listening to this to go back and not just and had just like look at YouTube, but also look at the team lists. Like I was looking at the Melbourne Tigers team, and I was a big Tigers fan growing up. Like we had a stacked team, and yet you guys go 21 games, 18 in the regular season, and then 3 in the finals, 21 game streak. And you towel us up. I mean, you had a good team, obviously. I mean, you had the likes of was it Sam McKinnon, Mick Hill. No, I'm going to go have a mind blank here.
Gibson, Dusty Reichard,
yeah,
Eddie Ara, CJ Groot. Chris Goulding was a DP on that team.
Right, was he? Wow, that's going back a lot. Because then you, go ahead.
Our other DP was supposed to be on that team was going to be Joe Ingles. And we tried everything. We were going to actually contract Joe. We tried everything we could to get him. And
but he went to South, right?
He ended up going to Southeast Melbourne Magic because he was going to not Southeast Melbourne.
South Dragons,
South Dragons. Because he followed Scott Nennis. He was going to go wherever Scott Nennis went. And he told me that if Scott gets a job, I'm going where he goes. And when Scott got that job, we lost him.
Yeah. That was an incredible season. Like the talent that was in that league. And I think if we had sort of if the NBL had the fame that it has now and the growth that it's had now, it would have been more appreciated. I think back then it was kind of in that little period where the NBL struggled a little bit and wasn't sort of packing out 10,000 seat stadiums and Kudos Arena and all the stuff that it is now. But in terms of the talent and the play and that sort of stuff, that was that was pretty next level. And a lot of players. Whilst we think of them as great names, the reality is quite a lot of them were still young then. You know what I mean? So it's not like they were the players that, it wasn't a peak. Adam Gibson, for instance, was still growing up. So you developed quite a few through there. How did you go? I guess as a coach. I guess keeping them up, to be honest, like 21 games is a hell of a lot of games to win in a row. How do you keep that going without things getting complacent, I guess?
Well, our emotion was never the reason why we won, and it definitely wasn't going to be the reason why we lost. So we had some things that we had to get done out there and some things we had to do in practice. And once again, it's a certain way to do things, black or white. I don't care if we won 6 games in a row. This is what we're doing. Oh, well, Coach, we're on the road. Can we have an extra day off for what? We're not having an extra day off. That's why we won 6 games in a row. We're going to practice just like we've been practicing. We don't have to do any more, but we definitely ain't doing any less. We're doing what we're doing. 12 games. Hey, Coach, no. you know the drill. We're going to do it this way. We're going to play just as hard. And we had KPIs we had to meet in terms of deflections and sprinting and dive on the floor. And we had a lot of aggression KPIs. And if I felt like they wasn't being met, I had 5 guys, not just one, not just 2, not just 3. I had 5 guys on the bench I could replace them with. Mark Brackey sitting over there. Adam
Yeah,
Gibson
that's the
sitting
one I was thinking of. Yeah.
there. Mick Hill sitting over there. Ebby Ross sitting over there. Ebby didn't start on that team. So I got 5 guys over here that I could just replace all 5 of you on the court. And I wouldn't even blink an eye. And that's what happened. Our second 5, which was called the G Unit, they effectively affectionately named themselves the G Unit. They had T-shirts called the G Unit, and they would come off the bench, and they were our killers, and they kept the guys in front in check. And then those guys would go, "Hey, we can't let these guys on the bench come run up the score. We better do it." So they would play hard, and it just played off each other. And everyone could have their butt set down. Sam McKinnon was by far our best player. And if Sam wasn't doing the right thing in practice, he got a spray. If he doesn't do the right thing in the game, he's got a spray. And I think the other people saw no one's ever given Sammy a spray in the history of Sam playing basketball. And if he's willing to give Sam a spray, we might want to do what we need to do.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I hope the listeners take note of that. Not just on the accountability side of things, but if you are in a situation where, you do have a team that's, or not even a team that's on a winning streak, but to not just be defined by wins and losses, and have those, I guess, KPIs, as you put it. Whether it's okay, we cannot give up more than 7 turnovers and a half, or whatever it is, aggression goals, like you said. Deflections is a really good one, because that obviously is an outcome of hustle play and things like that, and effort. So this is probably a good time to ask Mick Hill's question. He just wanted to know why he didn't play anymore.
Based on what I just said, I had 10 guys, not just 5, and none of them played as much as they should have played. It's only 200 minutes to spread out over 10 players at that particular time. So at best, they played 20 minutes. Well, you got Sam McKinnon sitting over there. He deserves more than 20 minutes. So that's going to eat into somebody's lunch. And if it was between Sam McKinnon and Mick Hill, you know where I'm going with that one.
There's your answer, Mick. And we're going to get him on the pod at some point in the future as well. Look, we'll keep moving on. Obviously, fantastic season there. Win the chip. And as you said, Sam was unbelievable that season. Won both the season MVP and won the finals MVP as well. And
Oscar Asian. He also got Defensive Player of the Year, Oscar Asian Player of the Year.
He cleaned up.
He led. He was close to leading in 3-point percentage. I think it's still the best year that anyone's ever had in the history of the NBL. I don't think statistically ever been a better season.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's a massive call, but it's a call that I think I said last week on the podcast with Simon Dwight, is there's 3 players that certainly not the experts, but the fans keep coming back to me with on the pages that in this day and age probably could have gone NBA, and that was Sam McKinnon, Matt Nielsen, and potentially Simon Dwight. It's interesting you say that. You obviously go on to the Gold Coast Blaze, where we sort of really see Chris Goulding sort of start to really appear. And I guess I'd sort of like to ask you about that. I mean, you had a whole bunch of good players at the Blaze, and I guess I remember watching Chris Goulding for, I think it was Southern Districts, like a Brisbane team in the CBL as well, at a very young age. And then also he was playing against Paddy in the under-20s at Ballarat, against Paddy Mills at one point. A style of play, and we all know how CG plays now, but a style of play where if you weren't as good as him, coaches probably wouldn't be favourable of it. And what I mean by that for the listeners is, so I'll paint the picture for them. You've got a CBL competition, so semi-professional men's, And then you've got a 19-year-old or 20-year-old who's backing someone down from the three-point line, then turns around, does a fadeaway three-pointer with about 18 seconds still on the clock. Most of us would get dragged for that. So for you to see something, and I'm going to touch on another player soon, for you to see something in him, now, obviously he was a good player. He got picked for those state teams, yada, yada. But for you to, I guess, manage that, massage it into a team where you're trying to keep people happy, but also your ultimate goal is to win games. How was that for you, taking a player that was very instinctual and then sort of applying him in the professionals?
Well, first of all, I knew him since he was 16. So I identified him playing in the pickup game at Southern Districts.
Yeah.
We needed an extra player. We were playing in the old Fat Man League, and Big Joe said, that kid's over there shooting by himself is pretty good. And I said, well, get him. We just need a fifth. He came on the court and played, and he blew my mind. I was like watching him while we were playing. And I said to him at the time, I said, hey, where you play at? I'm going to keep an eye on you. And he goes, oh, I'm not at an association at all. I just got kicked out of this one. And I was at Capitals before that. And I said, well, why'd you get kicked out? I said, you're too talented. I said, are you an asshole? And he goes, well, I don't think I'm an asshole. And I said, all right, I'm going to get a chance to prove it to me. I said, every break you have over when you're in high school, I want you to come train with us. And he came in and trained with us. And, you got Adam Gibson couldn't even give him practice time at that time. So, of course, this 16-year-old is not going to get any practice time. So, he basically came and watched, hung out. He was a smart ass and cracked a lot of jokes. And, as soon as we had shooting drills, he'd jump in. As soon as we had one-on-ones, he'd jump in. He did all the individuals, and he was just a worker. He worked his butt off. And he just learned from those guys how to be a pro. And then the next year, he got into practice a little more, and the year after that, a little more. But Chris was with me for, I think, 5 years before he ever touched the court. And then he told me this. I don't remember. He said, yeah, you put me on for 1 second and took my ass off. I first played him. I put him in for 1 second and then pulled him off. It would have been an end of game type situation or end of a clock situation. But he was with me, so I trusted who he was. I trusted his hard work. Chris is one of the hardest workers that I ever coached. My rule is to beat everybody to the gym. I don't want anybody in that gym before me. They come in that gym, let's go, ready to go. I'm here. And so I would arrive before everyone, and Chris figured that out. And so he would get there before me. And then I would get there before him. And then finally I said, Chris, we got to stop this shit. It was about 6:30 before, he started riding. And I just said, cool, you beat me here. When I get here, we're going to work out. But we'd practice was at 10. I'd usually get there at 8:30, 9. Chris would start getting there at 8. Then I would get there at 7:30. Then Chris would get there at 7. Then I would get there at 6. And I said, enough is enough. So but he was just a hard worker. So I trusted everything about him. And I call him a mad scientist. He's a guy that you can't put no constraints under him. If it's harder, if it's a tougher shot, he's more likely to make it. He gets bored with the simple. So as a coach and developing coach, like where I work with people, I had to keep challenging this guy. Like I keep challenging, say, okay, all right, you can shoot the spot up 3. Let's start shooting it off one leg. Let's start shooting it from half court. So before you leave, I need 5 half court shots made. I need you to jump behind the backboard and figure out how to score. So I had to give him challenges that were ridiculous, and he would meet them. And that's, he put the time in. It's no credit for me, for anybody. Chris Goulding made Chris Goulding.
Fantastic. That's a great insight for all of us to see what goes on behind the scenes. And I guess in answer to my question, instead of fighting it, you really embraced it, and you were like, well, how far can we take these challenging shots and those sort of things? Because like you said, it's the end product now is there is no constraining him.
Well, I told him when he was, this was his first year at Gold Coast. I sat him down and said, I'm going to be serious with you here. And Adam Gibson's huge at that time, big time. player. We had who else at the guard position? James Harden. He was probably one of the best guards in the league at the time. We had a tough guard group. And I said to him, I said, "You're going to play." I said, "I don't know how much yet because it depends on what these guys give me or don't give me. But you're going to play." And I said, "I want to go a step further." I said, "I think you have a chance to play in the NBA." And he looked at me, and his exact words was, "Man, why you effing with me?" And I said, "What?" It caught me off guard. I said, "What?" He goes, "Why you effing with me?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, I can't play no NBA. And I said, "Yes, you can." I said, "You have something that other people don't have." His innate confidence, his innate work ethic was beyond anyone. And that means something, and it was going to mean something. And I said, "Well, trust me with it." I said, "Just trust me with it." And he said, "Okay." He signed with Dallas, I think, in a whatever. And he called me and he said, "Remember you told me this?" He goes, "Man, I just thought you was fucking with me." And I said, "No." I said, "I believe this. I really believe this." And so years later, I think he got to preseason or something, or maybe summer league. He signed with summer league or something.
Yeah, that's incredible. Just to give a player that belief, um, yeah, is phenomenal. Sometimes those words can go a hell of a long way, which they obviously have. He's gone on to have an incredible career. Now, another player that I want to touch on, because obviously beyond the Blaze, and we won't probably delve too much in your Adelaide 36ers career because there's a lot. I guess you've done a lot of interviews on that, and a lot's been said about that, and it's sort of fresh of mind and those sort of things. Because what I want to do is get behind it. Now, what you've spoken about Chris Goulding with was on a podcast recently. A young player who's now really flourishing is Ben Eyre, who's down here with the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, and he was talking about his journey through juniors, and a little bit like Campbell Blogg, who's over at Melbourne United now, is didn't make first teams in major years, played for a smaller club in terms of McKinnon, wasn't invited to state team tryouts, that sort of thing. And yet at did you call them all-star camps or five-star basketball camp? Five-star basketball camp, yeah. So he tells the story of, going to a five-star basketball camp, and then he goes, "I'm essentially a nobody, just want to work on my game because I haven't made any of these top teams and stuff like that. And I'm probably thinking about going to football because I was a bit better at football, but mum thought I was going to get my bones broken and stuff." And then he goes, Joey Wright approaches me and says, "I want you to come work out 6 a.m. tomorrow morning with me." And he said, "We did this most days for that camp, and then we would still do the camp." And he goes, "Back then the camps were like 9 to 5, like real long day camps." And it just resonated with me then when you said about giving Chris Goulding that belief and seeing him. You essentially saw past, I guess, the names when it comes to junior basketball that might have been, Vic Metro players or what have you, and you just saw the player for who they were. And it speaks to what you said earlier about you just see the player for what they are, not, how good they are and all that. So I guess my question, a long-winded way of putting it, was do you think this is something that you're particularly gifted with, the ability to see talent when others have ignored it or just not seen it? Or do you think it's something that's been learned through your basketball experience? Because obviously anyone can go watch Vic Metro or South Australia Metro and go, "Oh, these guys are good." But to pick someone out that's not playing top division and go, "They could actually be really good," that's very different. What are your thoughts on that?
At the time, I just thought I was being a basketball coach. I didn't know I was doing anything different. 20 years later, I go, yeah, maybe I do have a gift for seeing things that others don't see. And so I start to outline those. Like what do I look in players? Like what I would just really be around a player and then I get a feel for who they were and, ask questions. And when I first saw Ben Eyre, and he exuded all those things that Chris Goulding had. I knew that I was like, this kid's different. Like I knew he was different. I've coached a young lady, Laura Samphy, over the last 5 or 6 years, and she's slowly turned into one of the better female players here in Australia. And I saw the same thing in her. It's these things, these qualities I see. I have coined them and wrote them down now and put it all together. Now that I have more time, but I saw that in Ben Ayer, and Ben is, he was exceptional. And I gave Ben that day I saw him. I sent him home with a goal to do, and he came back with Band-Aids on his fingers. And I was like, "Did you burn yourself?" And he goes, "No, I shot so much last night working on that I rubbed the skin off my fingers." And I was like, "You're my guy." I said, "You're my guy." Like I'm thinking in my head, I found one. And so I just kind of matured that thing and went from there. Kyle Adman was another one. No one knew Kyle Adman was. I seen him playing in the back of a gym in Melbourne and was like, this kid's different. And so when I get that feel, I put a lot of energy into those kids. I've never charged Ben for a workout a day in his life. I never, I used to, have him come up when he was 14, 15 years old, come up to the coast and train with us. And I knew he was going to be exactly what he is too. And I still think his story's going to be bigger than what it is now. I think it's going to come get even bigger. So, yeah, I think I do have probably a gift for that. I would love for Australia to recognize it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they ever will. But yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think you do, and I think it's yeah. I mean, it's just evident. I mean, ego might stop people from recognizing it because they don't want to believe it. But I mean, the facts are the facts, and you've got someone like Ben who, many years on now and many experiences on, still credits that as being a real turning point for him. Now, a few questions from the Instagram. Jeff Cerner has asked, when scouting players, what 3 things you're looking for? I mean, you've probably touched on it already, and it probably is positional as well, what the team needs. But if you could sort of, I guess, generalize 3 things that you look for when you are recruiting, what would they be?
It's 8 things. I'll try to make sure I remember them all here. So skill. So how gifted they are at shooting, dribbling, passing, and communication. I count communication as a skill set. All right. Coachability. Do they listen and take feedback? Now, coachability is not always getting along. I don't, if you're going to really, really, really get to the heart of a player and push them and drive a talented player, you two are not going to get along for a period. Like it's not about that, but still their ability to take direction is important. Their athletic makeup. So how fast, quick, tall they are, and athletic makeup is not just how high you can jump. It's your lateral movement. It's your reaction time. It's your ability to stop. And so it's not just, how high you jump. Most people think that. Creativity. And this is one that a lot of Australians will just throw to the wayside. And a lot of Australian coaches not only throw it to the wayside, it actually bothers them. So when Chris Goulding was, going behind the back and between the legs and, doing a 360 and then shooting the ball, I was like, cool. That makes you happy? Just make sure you can make a lot of those and make sure you practice a lot of those. And he would. And so that never really bothered me much. Resilience. So you got to be tough. If you're not resilient, you're not willing to play through sickness and that kind of stuff, you're not gonna be real feasible. So those are that's 105 there or whatever, but that's more than 3. Take those.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
I definitely, have a motto. I could actually I'll send you my grade 8 when we get off this and you can pass it on.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Thanks for answering that. So detailed. Matty Shanahan, Bubble has also asked, which NBL team at the moment do you actually enjoy watching? I guess you're going to have to go off last season because we're obviously in preseason now, but yeah.
Last season, without a doubt, Melbourne, I like the way Dean coaches. I think Dean coaches the right way. His team last year wasn't great, but that still doesn't deter me from, that was more due to injuries more than anything. But Tasmania, love watching Tasmania play and what they do. Perth, New Zealand, love watching them play. So those are probably the teams that I really enjoyed, just the way they played and how they went about it. I think Moldy and also 40 at Cairns. I think 40 is one of the next brilliant coaches coming through, and Moldy at New Zealand is brilliant as well. So it's really good young coaching talent out there. Tasmania's Coach Scott does a fantastic job of getting these guys to play 100%, 100% of the time. He got some talent down there this year. They're gonna be tough. They're gonna be real tough.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I was kind of hoping, being a United fan, we'd bring Lee back, but it hasn't happened because I really liked him. Good shot blocker, good inside, but especially now JLL. Joe Lawala-Chill's gone down, but hopefully he's back at some point.
You didn't see if Porter was healthy and JL was healthy. He wasn't needed.
Yeah,
they could put more. Yeah. And this, I haven't talked to Dean about this. This is just my opinion. But if I got Porter coming back and I got JL, then I don't need a Lee because Porter and Lee is kind of. I already got him on the roster. Why pay this big money here? I can go get me a dynamic 1, 2, and 3. And really, really show up.
Yeah, and I think that's what they've done with Ian Clark. And Huck Porty looks like a real menace. He's had to wait a long time with so many injuries, but just watching him the other day, he's a real vicious player inside, which will be good. Now, the NBL have made sort of no secret of the fact that this coming weekend, the preseason tournament or the preseason week, I should say, for the NBL is in the Gold Coast because they're testing the waters. They've come out and said that in terms of looking at resurrecting a team on the Gold Coast. The obvious question is, would you be interested if they came knocking? Because we have had, that's been the most popular question off the Instagram. Would you coach in the NBL again? And if so, would that be a place where you would go?
No, not at all. I have no interest in coaching in the NBL at all. The day I left or decided to leave, everyone thinks I got fired from the 36ers. Me and the owner at that time sat down and came up with a plan, and I had no more interest in coaching in the NBL. A lot to do with how the NBL's changed. When I came to this league, and the reason it attracted me as a player and then back again as a coach was the purity of the league. It wasn't about entertainment. I'm not going to start a next generation player just because the league can make money from it. I'm going to start him if he's going to help me win games. If he's not going to help me win games, his butt's going to sit over there on the bench, regardless of if he's a next gen player or not. And when that kind of pressure came in, and then the role of the GM or the CEO is different than it used to be. Like, me and Brian Gorgon and Lindsey Gaze and Trevor, we picked our teams. Now other people are picking a team, and those other people don't have the qualifications. So that was very frustrating for me. If it was someone picking my team that had the qualifications, shit, I don't have a problem with that. We worked together on it. We confer and go, yep, this is the guy. Let's move on him and get him. But it was literally guys showing up on my roster that I wasn't happy with and would have never coached. And so that makes it real hard. And for those reasons, I don't want to coach in this league again. And I know a lot of coaches are suffering from that. And, if I was 34, 35, 36, 37, and I probably would go through that just to say, hey, I coached at this level, and how good am I? Because all the coaches are going through it now. But if I can't pick my team and Scott Roth can, he's going to kick my butt. If I can't pick my team and 40 can, he's going to kick my butt. Whoever picks their teams are going to win. They have to confer with the coach. I know Sydney has a big conglomerate of – Sydney's another team I love watching too over the last couple of years. And they have, a big conglomerate there that picks the team. But guess what? It's look who's picking.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah, I can listen to them guys. Like, look who's over there picking that team. Like, I mean,
that's a panel of experts in terms of Bogut and Longley and those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Bogut says he's pretty good, and I can trust that. I can probably trust him.
So. Yeah. No, 100%. That makes sense, and I guess the astute basketball fan will see the practicalities of exactly what you're talking about, because we have seen where, coaches, you can tell whether in the clubs where they haven't necessarily picked the players. I think Brett Maher alerted to, like the Craig Randall situation with CJ Bruton, and situations where they're clearly not on the same page and they've been forced to get along. Um, yeah, no, it's really interesting when you say that, because you do see it from time to time, and obviously it's to the detriment of the team. Like you said, if Scott Roth can pick his own team,
Mm.
he's going to be ahead of someone that's being forced to just make the best of what they've got.
Now, I would love to be in a GM role. I would love that. My ability to identify talent,
Yeah,
my ability to develop rapport with players, that stuff, and understand the numbers. Like when I picked my team, they gave me a budget. I picked a team. I signed the players. I made the numbers work. I did all that. I was a 65, 66% success rate when I picked a team, and 50% when others picked it. So I do think I know what I'm doing when it comes to that. So that job, the GM or director of player personnel, whatever the role is at Gold Coast or any other club, I would definitely be interested in that.
yeah, okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, and it makes sense, because that would be a perfect role for someone like yourself. Because I wanted to ask that question, I guess, because we've had differing views on this or not differing views, different experiences, I guess, on this podcast. Like DMAC was saying how, they're very much the coaches picking the teams, and I think the owner from overseas has a little bit of a say or something when it comes to Brisbane. Dean said it's a never-ending process when it comes to recruiting. This is Dean Vickerman, in terms of, like you said, front office, a meeting, the owners, etc., and they're all working together to pick their imports, which is probably the side of it that, like you said, you wouldn't prefer. And then I'm just sort of wrapping this up for the listeners. And then the Sydney, obviously, like you said, like they've got ownership involved, but when you look at their ownership, it's outside of the Paul Smith, whatever his name is. You've got Luke
Yeah.
Longley, you've got Andrew Bogut, that clearly know who they're picking. So, so no, it's an interesting comment you're making. I guess going back to the purity, just to cover off the question for the guys that asked it, when you said the purity of basketball, does that mean you'd coach something that's, I guess, a little less political, like an NBL one team or something like that?
Not even that, because what I'm doing now, I'm getting my fulfillment. Like I never ever coached because I want to have people stand up and clap for me. Never,
Yeah,
never. Matter. I never even heard the fans. Like I never heard the noise. I don't hear that music everybody talks about either. It's funny what your brain can do, and
you're so into it. Yeah,
everybody's like that music. I'm like I never heard any music the whole game. I never hear the fans. I never hear any claps. When I played, I never heard no external motivation. I wouldn't allow anything externally to motivate me at all. If it wasn't internal, then I ignored it. And so I'm getting that now. Like my transition kids, I'm into them. I'm checking on them. I'm calling them. I'm checking on what they're doing, and I'm going to their games and I'm watching. At my gym, my members come in. Yeah, I'm over there. Hey, keep your elbow in, get down lower. Point your foot this way. So I'm getting all of that stuff that I've wanted as a coach. And it's never ever thrilled me to do that with anybody that was a big name.
yeah,
They don't have a big name for me to gain that enjoyment. Amanda Petaway, who's going to be this fantastic player here, I'll put her name out there. She called me the other day, and she's just, I'm so happy because I'm able to do this, and you showed me this, and now it's working the games, and oh my God, I get just as much fulfillment out of that as winning the third game of a grand final, championship.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. Well, if you ever want to come and live in Victoria, we'll take you,
I am
because
coming.
we
I'm
need
coming.
we need people. We need people like that. I think that's a rarity, to be honest. For a coach of your caliber to then be able to not just find fulfillment from it, but then be willing to do it so often and so regularly. That's pretty rare. So, look, I'll let you go for today. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for being so down. You're a very down to earth character,
Thank
and
you.
I can see why you're so popular now amongst all the players and the coaches, and just so giving of of your time. So I really appreciate that, Joey. I think a lot of the fans will see a little bit of a different side of you, and we can see why everyone likes you, because I think some of them might see angry Joey on the sideline a bit and think that angry Joey's all we get.
What's funny about that, real quick, before you sign off, is most of the time I was yelling. I'm yelling at them because I'm telling them you're too effing good to be out there acting like you're acting. I give people as much intensity, positive intensity, as I do negative. Most people yell when someone do wrong and silently clap when they do something right. I'm yelling at them, you're too fucking good to be playing like this. And someone else is going, oh, he's giving them a spread. That's the difference.
Yeah, no, that is the difference. That's a way of bringing them back up to what their potential can be and bringing the best out of them. So, look, thanks again. For those listening, I'll put in the show notes the transition sports stuff, so you can go and have a look at that. If you shoot through that grading stuff when it comes to scouting, we'll put that up also. And we'll leave it there. But yeah, thanks again for your generosity, Joey, and good luck with everything for the rest of the year. And I guess one last thing, do you have a tip for the NBL for this coming season?
I'm gonna go with Tasmania.
Has he?
Everybody stays healthy. I think they're a step above with the talent they recruited, the talent they retained, and their coach.
Tassie would take off if that happened.
Last year, I was a Melbourne United fan. Melbourne was my team last year, and that's just mainly because of Dean. This year I'm going to have to roll with Tasmania.
Awesome. Okay, we'll hold you to that. We might have you back on in a year's time and see how we're going with all that, and see what's happened with the league and what's happened with transition sports, and some of those names that you've dropped to those female athletes, where they're at in the coming years, because that sounds exciting and interesting when you can watch a player from day dot to where they end up. So that's awesome. Thanks again, Joey, and we'll chat again soon.
All right, bye.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.